Now I'm going to take the last chapter, that is landscape of the soul. If you have read the chapter, you might feel that the chapter is bit boring. It has no relevance what we are actually looking, but it is actually about how we appreciate the art. अगर हम लोग आर्ट को देखते हैं, डेफिनेटली आर्ट का अपना एक तरीका होता है. Two artists may not be having the same kind of vision towards one particular thing. The same presentation, a tree, for some it may symbolize happiness, for some it may symbolize something else. So this is, यहाँ जो writer है, he is contrasting two forms of art. मतलब जो हमारा है, two forms of art he is comparing. One is the eastern one, that's China, Chinese art, and the second one is the western, that is European art. And this he presents to two different stories. वो दो stories को लेता है और इसको present करने की कोशिश करता है. That what happens in China, how do the Chinese painter looks into his painting, while how do the Europeans look into a painting. Then he also comes to the next part, that is what we call as raw brute. Means there are some painters who haven't gone to any art school, yet they have achieved the pinnacle in art. And here he is taking the example of Indian artist Nek Chand, who has created the beautiful rock garden in Chandigarh. I think most of you might have visited rock garden and you must have mesmerized by the way it is presented. And that particular creativity is of Nek Chand. So these are the three different ways he tries to present what we call as artistic skill. He recites a story about Chinese emperor, and he says that while we are looking at the painting, हम लोग क्या करते हैं? When we look at the painting, we just look at the outer beauty. Whatever is there, we look at the outer beauty. लेकिन जो चाइनीज पेंटर है, he wants to enter, means उसने जिस पर्पस से उस पेंटिंग को बनाया है, the way, whatever he had thought, whatever he had perceived, he wants the looker to see that. वो चाहता है कि जो onlooker है, जो देख रहा है, they should appreciate the exact idea जो वो करना चाहता था, जो वो दिखाना चाहता था. Like he is showing a painting to a king, and वहां पर एक केव बनाया है. मतलब he has painted a landscape, and landscape के अंदर उसने जो है एक केव बनाया है. Now what the king is looking at the cave, लेकिन जो पेंटर है, he has entered into the cave. What it means is that the painter wanted the king to look into the way कि उसने उसके अंदर क्या क्या सोचा था, कि उस केव के अंदर क्या है. Even though he hasn't shown it on the landscape, but he wants to understand. On the other hand, जो second story है, it is about a European artist जो ये देखने के लिए कहता है कि to see a real viewpoint by borrowing his eyes. That is perfect. That's an illusion likeness. चाइना वाला इनर स्पिरिचुअल वॉइस के थ्रू एब्स्ट्रैक्ट आइडिया बना रहा है, whereas जो यूरोपियन है, he wants to look into the painting from his voice, from his eyes. So there are two different stories and two different, you can say, culture. Two distinct culture. One is of the Eastern and second is of the Western. So how do they look into a painting? That's landscape of the soul. You have limited questions in that, and if you are keen on all those, you can master them. I'm sharing the screen with you. A wonderful old tale is told about painter Wu Dozi, who lived in the 8th century. It's not now, it's 8th. His last painting was a landscape. Landscape आपका ऐसा होता है जिसके अंदर you are making the land. Normally हम जब छोटे होते थे तो हमारे लिए landscape का मतलब होता था 4 पहाड़ बनाना, एक पीछे सूरज बनाना, then नीचे पेड़ बना देना. तो landscape, the beauty of the land, commissioned by the Tang Emperor Xuanzong to decorate a palace wall. मतलब उसको जो है इस emperor ने बोला था कि palace wall को सजाना है, उसी लिए you have to make a painting, and that was his last painting. The master had hidden his work. Beta had hidden his is alliteration. Had hidden his work behind a screen. मतलब उसने छुपाया था. He just wanted that the painting should be first seen by the emperor. So, for a long while, the emperor admired the wonderful scene, discovering forest, high mountains, waterfalls, cloud floating in an immense sky, men on hilly paths, bird in flight. These were the things that he had made. उसने ये सब चीजें जो है he had made in his painting. Look, sir. S-I-R-E, sir. In this cave, at the foot of the mountain dwells a spirit. मतलब अब वो बताना चाहता है that this is an abstract painting. Means इस painting का एक meaning है. There is a meaning. This is not generalized landscape. There is a meaning behind it. There is a spirit. इस cave के अंदर एक सुंदर आत्मा रहती है. The spirit is not भूत. यहाँ पर the spirit means a good person. The painter clapped his hands and the entrance to the cave opened. यहाँ पर it is not realistic. This is illusion. And यहाँ पर वो उसका कहने का मतलब है कि he was entering, he was showing the painting as per the abstract idea that he had created. The inside is splendid, beyond anything words can convey. Please let me show your majesty the way. The painter entered the cave, but the entrance closed behind him. And before the astonished emperor could move or utter a word, the painting had vanished from the wall. Now, here what he wants to say is, painter जैसा दिखाना चाहता था, the abstract idea that could not be seen by the emperor. That could not be seen by the emperor. Even if he could say anything, he found that he wasn't able to comprehend that. Not a trace of Wu Dozi's brush was left, and the artist was never seen again in this world. This is a story. This is a story, a fairy tale, you can say, an illusionist story, a fiction. Means the painter wanted that the idea that he had created should be understood by the emperor, which was not. Such stories played an important part in China's classical education. The books of Confucius was a great scholar and also a spiritual leader, and Chinese follow Confucius as a religion, and Zhuangzi are full of them. They help the master to guide his disciple in the right direction. Means such stories were ethical, moral, showing the righteous path. Beyond the anecdote, they are deeply, anecdote का मतलब होता है amusing or any interesting story about a real incident or a person. They are deeply revealing of the spirit in which the art was considered. Normally they would be taking out, there's a depiction of a narrative using painting is called as anecdote. Contrast to the story or another famous one about a painter who wouldn't draw the eye of a dragon he had painted. For fear it would fly out of the painting. यहाँ पर again it is alliteration, for fear fly. With an old story from my native Flanders that I find most representative of the Western painting. Now ये जो दूसरी जो कहानी वो बता रहा है, this is Flanders is a medieval country in Europe. वो कहता है कि वहाँ पर एक ऐसा पेंटर था जो अपने ड्रैगन की आंखें नहीं बनाता था क्योंकि उसे लगता था that is illusionistic reality. That's a real painting, and that if he draws, that was so realistic that the dragon may fly. In 15th century Antwerp, a master blacksmith called Quentin Metzi fell in love with a painter's daughter. जो एंटवर्प था वो तो ब्लैकस्मिथ था, दैट इज आपका लोहार, लोहे का काम करने वाला. बट हिज लवर वॉज अ पेंटर्स डॉटर. लेकिन द फादर वुड नॉट एक्सेप्ट अ सन इन लॉ इन सच अ प्रोफेशन बिकॉज लिटरेचर, आर्ट, they are considered superior, whereas blacksmith not. So Quentin sneaked into the painter's studio and painted a fly on his latest panel with such delicate realism that the master tried to swat it away before he realized what had happened. अब क्विंटन जो है वो मनाना चाहता था उस पेंटर को. एक दिन वो चोरी छुपके, स्नीक्ड मतलब चुपके से, विदाउट द नॉलेज ऑफ एनीवन, वो पेंटर के जहाँ पेंटिंग करता था वहाँ गया एंड उन्होंने एक पेंटिंग बना रखी थी, उसके ऊपर एक फ्लाई बनाया. मतलब ही वॉज सो स्किल्ड, even though he was a blacksmith, yet he was so skilled that he painted a fly in such a manner with such delicate realism. Matlab it looked as if the fly was real. It is transferred epithet. This is transferred epithet. Delicate is the adjective and realism is noun. That the master tried to swat it away before he realized what had happened. Now swat it away मतलब उसको भगाने की कोशिश कर रहा था उसको. बाद में उसे समझ आया that the fly was actually a painting, it was not real. He realized what had happened में जो है आपका you have assonance, that is the vowel A is repeated. Realized A, what had happened. So you have to use it assonance. Assonance. Quentin was immediately admitted as an apprentice into his office, in his studio. और इससे वो इतना ज़्यादा इंस्पायर हुआ, मतलब कि ही वॉज रियली इंस्पायर्ड दैट उसने क्विंटन को जो है अपने नीचे एक अप्रेंटिस अपॉइंट कर लिया, मीन्स एज एन असिस्टेंट. अप्रेंटिस होते हैं बेटा दोज हु हेल्प बट दे आर नॉट पेड. एक्चुअली नॉर्मली अप्रेंटिसशिप में पेमेंट नहीं होती है. दे आर टॉट द स्किल्स, उनमें उनको स्किल्स सिखाए जाते हैं. He married his beloved and went on to become one of the most famous painters of his age. And later on, that person, that is Quentin, he became one of the famous painters. So, these two stories illustrate that each form of art is trying to achieve a perfect illusionistic likeness in Europe and the essence of inner life and spirit in Asia. That is, in Western culture, they have an illusionistic life, यानी कि imagination. Whereas in Asia, they यानी कि जो Eastern paintings है, they normally go for the abstract idea, the spiritual idea, the inner life. That is the difference between the Eastern and Western painting. ये this मतलब कि if the subjective part comes in, this kind of question has come in the paper. In the Chinese story, the emperor commissions a painting and appreciates its outer look. But the artist reveals him the true meaning of his work, जो मैंने अभी आपको स्टार्टिंग में बताया था. That Chinese यानी कि जो ईस्टर्न वर्क होता है, they want to go in for the abstract idea. The artist wanted he should understand कि उसने किस मीनिंग से उस पेंटिंग को बनाया है. But the emperor cannot appreciate it. The emperor cannot appreciate it because emperor is a king. He may be politically strong, but he may not be artistically strong. A person who is politically strong may not be artistic. ये पेपर में आता और आपके बैक का क्वेश्चन है NCERT का. The emperor may rule over his territory he has conquered, but only the artist knows the way within. Means an emperor may be politically very strong, but he cannot understand the real meaning of artist. So that is why the emperor can appreciate the outer look, but he cannot understand what is the abstract meaning. Let me show the way. The Tao, यहाँ पर लिखा हुआ है ना, the artist knows the way within. Let me show the way. मतलब मैं दिखाता हूँ आपको. He wants to tell that. The Tao, a word that means both the path or the method and the mysterious works of the universe. The painting is gone, but the artist has reached his goal beyond any materialistic appearance. यहाँ पर the painting has not gone means he wants to say that the painter wanted to show the real meaning, but it could not be seen by the emperor in the same manner. He wanted the painter wanted to enter his mind, even though the emperor tried, but it could not. That is the meaning. These all comes as a meaning beta. A classical Chinese landscape is not meant to reproduce an actual view. जो है उस actual view को दोबारा दिखाना नहीं है. मतलब the landscape is there, already there in the nature. He doesn't want it to present it on the canvas, as would a Western figurative painting. Whereas the European painter wants you to borrow his eyes and look at a particular landscape exactly as he saw it from a specific angle. European का view है that you need to see the view from his point of view. Whereas the Chinese does not choose a single viewpoint. He wants you to enter, he wants to understand the abstract idea. The landscape is not the real one and you can enter it from any point, then travel in it. The artist creates a path for your eyes to travel up and down, then back again in a leisurely moment. He wants you to enjoy that painting. आप उस पेंटिंग को enjoy करो. आप उसके अलग अलग मीनिंग निकालो. मतलब आप पेड़ का कुछ और मीनिंग निकालो. You can take out your you can symbolize your own. You can have your own symbols. Try to find out the meaning behind that. Not that वो जैसा बना है उसको वैसा ही नहीं देखना है. This is even more true in the case of the horizontal scroll, in which the action of slowly opening one section of the painting, then rolling it up to move on to other, adds a dimension of time which is unknown in any other form of painting. These kinds of painting you might have not seen, but I can tell you, हम लोग जो PPTs बनाते हैं, जो हम PPTs बनाते हैं, तो आपने देखा होगा एक PPT आता, एक स्लाइड आया, फिर दूसरा स्लाइड आया, फिर तीसरा स्लाइड आया. सो व्हेन वी आर हॉरिजॉन्टली स्क्रॉलिंग इट, हम उसको जो है ऊपर से नीचे स्क्रॉल करते हैं और एक एक करके पेंटिंग ऊपर आता है, तो वो इट एड्स अ डायमेंशन ऑफ टाइम. मतलब कि वो एक के बाद दूसरा, इट इज अ कोरिलेटेड स्टोरी. It also requires the active participation of the viewer who decides at what pace he will travel through the painting, a participation which is physical as well as mental. Means the painter wants you to mentally understand. It's not just appreciating but understand the concept. The Chinese painter does not want you to borrow his eyes. He wants you to enter his mind. वो कुछ देख रहा है, बट वो आपकी उसके दिमाग के अंदर जाने के लिए बोल रहा. दिमाग के अंदर मतलब द कंसेप्चुअल idea that he might have conceived. The landscape is an inner one, a spiritual and conceptual space. जिस कॉन्सेप्ट से उसने उस पेंटिंग को बनाया है, he wants you to understand that particular concept, the spirit, the abstract idea that he has used. Maybe through that particular painting he doesn't want to show you the beauty, he wants to show you the darkness of nature. So he wants that concept to be understood. This concept is expressed as shan shui. One of the most important question, and specifically if your school is going to have a subjective one, this question can be asked. This concept is expressed as shan shui, literally mountain water. मतलब shan और shui का जो meaning है वो है mountain water, which used together represent the word landscape. अगर आपने देखा हो, I'll just tell you. If you have seen normally, sorry. I'm just making it on the screen, so please do not laugh. What he says is, ये जो है मतलब landscape में, this is a mountain, right? And this is strong. This is the physical strength, the masculine strength. And ये जो नीचे है, that is आपका जो अभी हमने बोलता shan shui, mountain and water. Mountain and water. ये आपका जो है, this is earth. This is the symbol of patience. एंड ये जो बीच में आपको जो यू आर गेटिंग दिस वाइट कलर, ये जो आपको बीच में वाइट दिख रहा है, दिस इज व्हाट ही कॉल्स एज VOID, वॉइड, खाली जगह। माउंटेन ऊपर की तरफ, नीचे की तरफ आपका वाटर, शैन शुई, दिस इज आपका माउंटेन एंड वाटर। एंड इन बिटवीन यू ऑलवेज फाइंड, मतलब बिटवीन द heaven and the earth, you always find a blank space, that is aapka void. And he says every action takes place in this area only, हर वो एक्शन जो है वो इसी एरिया में होता है। लाइक आप जब प्राणायाम करते हैं, व्हेन यू आर डूइंग द प्राणायाम, तो क्या होता है, हम सांस को लेते हैं, वी जस्ट टेक इनसाइड, हम ब्रीथ को अंदर लेते हैं और फिर वी स्टॉप, हम मेडिटेट करते हैं तो हम स्टॉप कर देते हैं एंड देन वी रिलीज इट। तो वो जो 1 मिनट हमने अंदर रखा, दैट इज द टाइम व्हेन एक्शन टेक्स प्लेस। सो दैट इज व्हाट ही कंपेयर्स विद शैन शुई। More than two elements of an image, these represent two complementary poles, reflecting the Tao's view of universe. The mountain is yang, that is reaching vertically towards heaven. Stable means it is a symbol of stability, warm, dry in the sun, while the water is yin, horizontal, resting on the earth, fluid, moist and cool. The mountains represent stability and the yin that represents moisture and coolness. The interaction of yin, the receptive feminine aspect of universal energy, and its counterpart yang, active and masculine, is of course fundamental notion of Taoism. What is often overlooked is an essential third element. हम लोग पहाड़ को देखते हैं, पानी को देखते हैं, बट जो बीच में जो जगह होती है, which is called as a middle void, that is the earth, you can say. Heaven is used for yang and the earth, जहाँ humans है, their interaction takes place. This can be compared with the yogic practice of pranayam, breathe in, retain, breathe out. The suspension of breath is the void where meditation occurs. जब आप अंदर ले रहे हो और बाहर छोड़ रहे हो, उसके बीच का जो एक्शन है, that is void. The middle void is essential. Nothing can happen without it. Hence, the importance of the white unpainted space in Chinese landscape, जो अभी मैंने आपको दिखाया था. The painting normally has the brown color mountains or the green color mountains and the water on the earth, that is the bluish color, और बीच के अंदर आपका जो है white is there. But according to the Chinese, even that particular void जो खाली है, void का मतलब होता है खाली, void का आपका जो डिक्शनरी मीनिंग है वो है खाली. Even that जो खाली जगह है, even that has got its importance. That is the place where interaction takes place between the heaven and the earth. The yin has been said as a feminine, receptive, cool, patient, whereas the yang as a masculine, यानी कि physically strong, that is the mountains, horizontally scrolling towards the heaven, vertically towards the heaven. This is also where man finds a fundamental role. In that space between heaven and earth, he becomes a conduit of communication between both poles of the universe. The both pole here is the heaven and earth. And he becomes a way of communication. मतलब he is the one जो इन दोनों के बीच में communication करवा रहा है. That is where we live. That is where we live. Conduit का मतलब होता है channel. he becomes a conduit of communication, matlab he is a channel of communication between the heaven and between the water and the mountain, between the heaven and the earth. Conduit of communication again is electrician. His presence is essential if it is only suggested. Far from being lost or oppressed by the lofty peaks, he is, in Francois Cheng's wonderful expression, the eye of the landscape. मतलब फ्रेंकॉइस चेंग ने जो है इंसान को लैंडस्केप के आंखें बताई हैं. He is the one who sees he is the eye of the landscape. That is the eye. We are the eyes. So Cheng has suggested or expressed the humans presence as the eye of the landscape. ऊपर लैंड और नीचे स्केप, उन दोनों के बीच हम we are the eyes. So this is how a Chinese painting, the Chinese idea about art is different from what we have about Europe. Now the second part, this is about our own country. ये हमारी country के बारे में है. And as I said, that all are not born artists. And even if we are born artists, everyone doesn't go to an art school to get training. But yes, there are schools, not the one in which you go, schools of art, where art is highly appreciated. Specifically, if you go to the eastern parts like China or this way, and here also in the Europe also, you have got specific schools, specific universities. Music, art, literature, they have courses for them, and they are all high-ended courses. So art is appreciated much, but there are people who may not have gone to these schools. They may not have got any kind of exposure to these kinds of schools, yet they may have created aims for themselves. उन्होंने अपने लिए एक ऊंचाई क्रिएट कर रखी होगी. When French painter Jean Dubuffet mooted the concept of art brut, मतलब he brought this concept, उसने इस concept को लेकर आए थे. The art of the untrained visionary was of minority interest. Means art brut का मतलब होता है when a person is not having any official training. The art of the untrained visionary. और उस वक्त में people did not bother about that. 1940s में लोग नहीं bother करते थे because normally people appreciated, people worked from its almost veiled beginning. Veiled का मतलब होता है घूंघट, मतलब veil का मतलब होता है कोई चीज छुपाई हुई. Outsider art has gradually become the fastest growing area of interest in contemporary art internationally. But आज की डे में this outside arter या art यानी कि art brut means दोनों का meaning same है. Outsider art का मतलब होता है a person who is not an artist, a person who hasn't got any formal training, yet now it is becoming a contemporary art. In our country also there are so many artists, they come along. Yes, we have certain renowned artists, but yes, there are many artists who have not got any formal training. This genre is described as the art of those who have no right to be artists as they have received no formal training. And according to the schools of art, उन लोगों के अकॉर्डिंग इन लोगों को जो है they should not have any right to express their views. This is because they haven't got any formal training, yet they show talent and artistic insight. Their works are a stimulating contrast to a lot of mainstream offerings. मतलब कि जो mainstream offerings का मतलब होता है the one who have gone into the training, they have a stimulating contrast They are artistically very skilled. जैसा लोग सोचते हैं वैसा नहीं. There are people who may not have gone to a formal, who may not have had any formal training, yet they present that. Around the time Dubuffet was propounding his concept, मतलब ये चीज़ जो है वो सब जगह पे बताने की कोशिश करता था कि there are many people who are untrained, yet they have the artistic insight, artistic vision. But people were not that much, उस वक्त में people were not that much serious about this theory. But India के अंदर उस वक्त an untutored genius, untutored मतलब without any formal training, without any formal training, was creating paradise. मतलब he was creating the paradise, as I said, the rock garden. Years ago, the little patch of jungle that he began clearing to make himself a garden, sculpted with stone and recycled material, is known to the world today as a rock garden at Chandigarh. उन्होंने एक छोटी सी जगह ली थी, उस जगह को खाली करके he had tried to create a garden, but that garden was not created with what we call as plants or something else. It was created with all kinds of waste material that we find inside, or you can say around our areas. Everything like a broken glass, a broken cup, a broken this tube light, bulb, everything is used there, and he has created a paradise. In fact, if you have seen, you might have seen that he has created a complete thematic park. पूरा एक थीम है, जैसे एक है विमेन एम्पावरमेंट के ऊपर पूरा उन्होंने एक थीम बना रखा है. It's 80-year-old creator and director Nek Chand. But now he is no more. He died just few years back. Just few years back he died. That is in 2015 something. Is now hailed as India's biggest contributor to outsider art. Because he hasn't any training, so he is called as an outsider art. The 50th issue, that is in 2005, of Raw Vision, this is a magazine, a UK-based magazine pioneer in outsider art publications, features Nek Chand and his rock garden sculpture Women by the Waterfall on its anniversary issues cover. मतलब वो internationally इतने acclaimed है. He is acclaimed internationally to that level that even a UK-based magazine had its cover, and मतलब कि issue cover जो है उसमें उनकी photo लगाई थी. So you can see that how much he must have he has become famous internationally, though he did not go to any school. The notion of art brut or raw art was of works that were in their raw state as regards cultural and artistic influences. Anything and everything from a tin to a sink to a broken down car could be material for a work of art, something Nek Chand has taken to dizzying heights. Dizzy वैसे होता है बेटा, वैसे हमारा होता है dizzy का मतलब होता है मतलब चक्कर आना, dizziness, बट यहाँ dizzying height मतलब unimaginable. Dizzying heights मतलब unimaginable. Recognizing his art as an outstanding testimony of the difference a single man can make when he lives his dream. And this has become an evidence. Testimony मतलब evidence. This has become an evidence that अगर इंसान चाहे तो एक single आदमी भी जो है he can make difference. A single man can make when he lives his dream. मतलब he can make the difference जब वो चाहे तो. Where there is a will, there is a way. The Swiss Commission for UNESCO will be honoring him by way of a European exposition of his works. और उनके इस काम को जो है through an exhibition, it would be presented by the Swiss Commission यूनेस्को जो है दैट वाज सपोज टू प्रेजेंट, दैट हैपेंड. The 5-month interactive show, Ream of Nature, beginning October, will be held at leading museums in Switzerland, Belgium, France, and Italy. It was there, मतलब उनकी जो ये काम था, that was presented. The biggest reward is walking through the garden and seeing people enjoy my creation. But उनका मानना है, मतलब उनका मानना है that it is not the reward that UNESCO has given. Ream का मतलब होता है बेटा kingdom, you can say. Ream of nature मतलब नेक्चन की, नेक्चन क्या kingdom. He says the biggest reward is when you see people are walking through the garden, enjoying the creation. That gives him more pleasure than any other appreciation that he has received. So that is what we call as the landscape of the soul. So according to this, these are three forms of art that we have learned. One, the Eastern one, that's the Chinese. Those who wants us to enter into the mind. He wants us to understand the abstract idea, the concept according to which that painting has been made. Secondly is a figurative painting, that's figures, figure जो बनाते हैं. और लैंडस्केप आपका होता है जिसमें आप नेचर को प्रेजेंट करते हैं, एंड फिगरेटिव इज जहां आप फिगर्स को प्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं. सो दैट्स ऑफ द यूरोप वेयर ही सेज दैट द यूरोपियंस वांटेड दैट वी मस्ट सी, जैसा पेंटर ने जो बनाया है उसकी आंखों से हम देखें. मीन्स व्हाट इट इज, यू हैव टू सी दैट इल्यूजन you have to see. Then he says, when we look into the Chinese art, the landscape, land and scape, he presents it with the idea of shan shui, that's a mountain and the water. For this he used yang and yin as a term. The masculine strength, that's a mountain, stable, and women, patience, cool, moist is the earth with water. And in between we normally find a white space. हम लोग जब लैंडस्केप देखते हैं तो हम उसमें बीच में हम देखते हैं कि white space होता है. So that he calls that, even though that white space जो है that's a void, मतलब खाली जगह है, लेकिन वो खाली जगह भी जो है it is also an important element of the painting. उसके बिना वो पेंटिंग पूरी नहीं है. That painting is incomplete without that void, middle void. It's the one which actually अगर हम पिक्चर में देखते हैं तो वो उस पिक्चर को जो है it gives a form. वो उसको वो सुंदरता देता है. The mountains above and the earth below. उसके बीच का जो जगह है वो उसको सुंदरता देता है. And he has also given the metaphor for the humans who are the interaction, who are the channels of communication between the heaven and the earth. These are the inferences that he has made. Then apart from that, these are the learnt painters, the painters who had enough skills, the painters who had learnt, like एक जो उसने कहानी बताई थी कि जो एक क्विंस्टन था, he had married the painter's daughter when he had shown, when he had proved his skills of painting. Though he was a blacksmith, लेकिन उसने इतना सुंदर पेंटिंग बनाया था कि इवन जो मास्टर पेंटर था वो he was inspired और उसने अपने नीचे उसको अप्रेंटिसशिप में रख लिया था. And later on he became one of the famous painters. So these people are the one who have learnt, but there are people who haven't learnt. ये जो हमने 2-3 paintings देखे हैं, they are all made by the learned painter, but there are people who haven't gone to any school, and that's called as art brute. And this concept came around 1940 when people realized that there are many artists who don't go to any school, who haven't gone to any school, yet they have the artistic expressions. Normally art के जो group है in the fraternity, they don't allow them, but yet now they have got the prominence. अब उनकी जो है, उनको जो है काफ़ी significance मिल रहा है, उनको importance मिल रहा है, मतलब उनका नाम जो है इंटरनेशनल मैगजीन्स में आ रहा है, उनका काम जो है उसको एग्जिबिट किया जा रहा है, लाइक दैट ऑफ नेकचंद. नेकचंद, द अनट्यूटर्ड जीनियस ऑफ इंडिया, who hadn't learned the skill of sculpture, who hadn't learned the skill of this art, yet he has created a complete paradise that even UNESCO जो है उन्होंने इसका एग्जिबिशन, उनके काम का एग्जिबिशन लगाया था. And his work was also on the printed magazine as a cover page, which shows that not only the artists who are trained, even the untrained artists can also create magic. So in overall, we can say that this is an appreciation of art, the chapter Landscape of the Soul, right?